Welcome to today's Explainer. We've got a truly fascinating historical and spiritual mystery on our hands today. We're talking about a forgotten ancient god, a narrative that spans literally thousands of years, and a modern spiritual revelation that attempts to tie the whole thing together. So, I want you to keep this central question in the back of your mind as we go. Who exactly is the forgotten god that bridges ancient Greece, Egypt, and modern faith? It's kind of like a historical detective story, and we're going to unravel it together. To do that, we're diving straight into a specific source text by Ryuho Okawa titled, "What are the Teachings of the Ancient Gods of Greece and Egypt?" or Pharius. You'll also hear it transliterated as Ophearis. This book was actually published following a spiritual revelation recorded on January 17th, 2018. And let me tell you, it makes some pretty sweeping claims. Whether you're approaching it from a theological, historical, or honestly just a purely curious perspective. Here is our roadmap for today. 1. The mystery of Ophearis. 2. Unmasking the Egyptian god. 3. Roots of the resurrection. And 4. Shattering modern materialism. All right, let's jump straight into part 1, the mystery of Ophearis, a god missing from history. Right off the bat in Chapter 1, the text points out something wild. Traditional historical records have absolutely zero mention of a Greek god named Ophearis. I mean, he is a complete phantom to modern scholars. But the book doesn't frame this as proof he didn't exist. Instead, it treats it as this profound, ancient mystery just waiting to be unlocked through spiritual revelation. Which brings us right to Section 2. Unmasking the Egyptian god, Ophearis, is Osiris. The book's foreword establishes a truly massive spiritual lineage. It basically claims that a single soul spans thousands of years. It starts with this mysterious Greek and Cretan god Ophealis, roughly 6.5 millennia ago, then manifests later as the famous Egyptian god Osiris, directly impacts the resurrection faith of Jesus Christ, and finally culminates in that January 2018 spiritual revelation we're discussing today. That is quite the timeline. And this isn't just abstract theory. Physical history and ancient ruins like the Osirian and Abydos are deeply linked to the Osiris resurrection myth. As the text notes, Egyptian mythology describes Osiris as this prosperous king who was betrayed, his body famously scattered, and then miraculously reassembled by his wife Isis. This essentially marked him as a god of profound miracles, making him a foundational source for Greco-Egyptian civilization. Moving on to Part 3, Roots of the Resurrection, from Egypt to Christ. The text draws a really bold line between these two eras. On the one hand, we have Osiris's literal, physical resurrection, which you'll often see depicted in ancient art with those mummy-like bandages. On the other hand, we have the much later Christian faith, centered entirely on the resurrection of Jesus Christ. The author explicitly argues that the older, physical resurrection of Osiris heavily influenced Christian resurrection faith. And honestly, that's a similarity biblical scholars have debated for a long, long time. Now, surprisingly, the text actually bridges this ancient history with modern pop culture. It literally likens the incredible miracles performed by these ancient supreme beings to the superpowers we see in movies like The X-Men. The whole argument here is that what our modern society just brushes off as science fiction or fantasy, ancient peoples actually understood as very real, literal magic and divine power. That sets us up perfectly for our final section. Number 4. Shattering Modern Materialism, a Call to Return to Faith. The book's afterword draws a really stark contrast. Think about our current society. We are hyper-rational, completely reliant on intellect, computers, and what we call materialistic common sense. Opposing this is that lost, magical worldview of ancient times. The text argues that physical miracles aren't just a thing of the past. It claims they are actively being documented today within the happy science faith community, which it uses as proof that the spiritual realm is still incredibly real. So the text's ultimate diagnosis for modern society? Severe spiritual blindness. It says we are so hyper-focused on our screens and our data that we've completely lost the ability to see what was just inherently visible to our ancestors. To fix this, the author states that humanity must absolutely shatter its materialistic limitations. This whole revelation is framed as a sort of necessary rehabilitation for modern souls, urging us to completely shift how we perceive the universe. All right, pulling all of this together, the text basically aims to achieve four main things. First, to identify that missing god Aphelis as Osiris. Second, to trace the ancient roots of resurrection directly from Egypt to Christianity. Third, to combat modern materialistic logic. And finally, all these historical and spiritual realignments are presented as preparation for welcoming the descent of a supreme being, Lord El Cantare. I want to leave you with a final question to really chew on today. Based on the worldview presented in this text, is modern society's dismissal of the divine just a sign of intellectual progress, or is it actually a tragic loss of our most ancient inherent power? Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.